By 1943, German counterintelligence was confident it had learned how to win the radio war. Direction-finding units had become faster. Mobile interception trucks could triangulate a signal in minutes. Entire resistance networks across occupied Europe had been dismantled after a single careless transmission. To German planners, partisan radios were no longer a strategic threat. They were a problem that had already been solved. That assumption would prove catastrophically wrong. Deep inside occupied territory, far from any regular front line, a small Allied-linked radio network continued to operate. It had no permanent base, no fixed transmission schedule, and no long broadcasts. The operators moved constantly, transmitted briefly, and never repeated a message. To German intelligence, the area appeared cleared. Previous sweeps had captured radios, arrested operators, and dismantled known cells. Official reports described the region as neutralized. It was not. What German counterintelligence failed to understand was that the network they believed destroyed had never been centralized. It was fragmented by design. Operators did not know each other's locations. Messages passed through layers of couriers and cutouts before ever reaching a transmitter. And when radios were lost, replacements quietly appeared weeks later, assembled from scavenged parts and powered by improvised batteries. In late 1943, German forces began preparing a large troop movement through this sector. The operation was not defensive. It was intended to reposition units rapidly in response to Allied pressure elsewhere. Thousands of soldiers, vehicles, and supply columns were scheduled to pass through a corridor German planners believed was secure. The movement relied on secrecy and timing. Any advance warning would allow Allied forces to react. From German headquarters, the risk appeared minimal. No active resistance networks were listed. No radio traffic had been detected for weeks. Air reconnaissance showed nothing unusual. The corridor was considered safe. But on the ground, partisans saw everything. They watched the buildup begin. They observed the arrival of transport units and the clearing of roads. They noticed engineers reinforcing bridges and repairing surfaces not for retreat, but for heavy, sustained traffic. Most telling of all, they saw German security units tighten control of surrounding villages, not to suppress resistance, but to protect a movement already planned. This was not routine, and it was not local. The information was too important to ignore, but transmitting it carried enormous risk. German direction-finding patrols were active in the region, even if no longer focused on resistance suppression. Any signal lasting more than seconds could be located. Operators knew that once detected, survival was unlikely. The decision was made anyway. The transmission was brutally short. No greetings, no confirmations, no redundancias. A compressed report describing troop concentrations, movement timing, and route direction. The message was encoded using Allied intelligence protocols supplied earlier in the war. The entire broadcast lasted less than 20 seconds. Then the radio went silent. German monitoring stations registered the signal almost immediately, but too late to lock it down. The burst transmission vanished before reliable bearings could be established. Direction-finding teams searched the area for days. They found nothing. No radio, no operator, no trail. German intelligence concluded the transmission had been an isolated anomaly, possibly a malfunction, possibly a misinterpretation, certainly not evidence of an active network. The movement continued as planned. On the Allied side, the message arrived at a listening station tasked with handling irregular signals. At first, it appeared incomplete. Portions were distorted. Some timing references were unclear, but the core information was unmistakable. A large German force was moving through a corridor Allied planners believed inactive. Analysts compared the report with intercepted German radio traffic. Command-level communications referenced transport coordination and unit readiness inconsistent with local defensive needs. Aerial photographs taken days earlier suddenly made sense. Roads that had appeared abandoned were not abandoned at all. They were being prepared. The conclusion was unavoidable. Germany was moving thousands of troops under the assumption that no one was watching. Allied commanders reacted immediately. Air reconnaissance was redirected. Strike aircraft were placed on standby. Subordinate units were warned of possible movement through the sector. Within hours, Allied air forces began attacking columns German planners believed invisible. The results were devastating. Supply convoys were destroyed. Vehicles were abandoned. Troop concentrations became liabilities instead of assets. Units intended to reinforce the front arrived late, fragmented, or not at all. Entire formations were forced to disperse under pressure, losing cohesion before ever reaching their destination. Captured German reports later described the movement as unexpectedly compromised. No explanation was offered. No intelligence failure was identified. German counterintelligence could not explain how the Allies had known. They never discovered the radio. The partisan network responsible for the transmission went silent for weeks afterward. Several operators relocated. Equipment was dismantled and buried. No follow-up messages were sent. From a German perspective, the threat appeared to disappear once again, but the damage was done. That single transmission, brief, unconfirmed, and nearly ignored, had exposed a critical vulnerability. It demonstrated that German control over occupied territory was never as complete as reports suggested. More importantly, it proved that even late in the war, a small, invisible intelligence network could influence operations involving thousands of soldiers. This was not a battle won by firepower. It was a victory created by observation, restraint, and timing, by knowing when to speak and when to remain silent. Germany never found a radio that betrayed the movement, but they paid for it anyway, and they paid in thousands.